Sabrina Williams. I am the aquatic coordinator here at Smith Springs Community Center, and I want to say thank you for being a part of our summer program and to encourage you to always be you.
Hi, I'm Miss Mary, and I'm from the Old Hickory Community Center. And today we're going to be making a science project where we make a lava lamp. So what you're going to need is a clear container, some water, vegetable oil, food coloring, and Alka-Seltzer tablets. The first thing you're going to do is we're going to put water into our container, about 1/4 of the way. So that's going to be different for every container. On this one, it's going to be about to here. Then we're going to fill the rest of the container up to about 2 inches from the top with our oil. You don't want to overfill it because it will overflow. Alright. The next thing you're going to do is add your food coloring. About 10 drops will be good. Give that a minute to settle, and you're going to see that the water and the food coloring settle to the bottom, and that's because they are more dense or heavier than your oil, and that's a really important part of why this project works. So your food coloring has gone to the bottom, so now it's time to add your Alka-Seltzer. Using such a big container, we're actually going to use 2 Alka-Seltzer tablets. And you will start to see bubbles forming from a gas called carbon dioxide that the Alka-Seltzer gives off. And that's what causes the bubbles of the colored water to start to rise to the top. And that's how you get that lava lamp effect, where the colored water rises to the top with the bubbles, and then when they pop, the colored water goes back down to the bottom. And that's how you make a lava lamp.
So for this activity, you're going to need a piece of paper and a pencil. And an optional idea is to have a journal, and or you can bring some colored pencils or pens.
Good morning. What are you most curious about when you go outside and explore in nature? For me, I'm most curious about things that surprise me. And this morning I was walking past these plants and I looked a little closer and noticed that there are so many different insects just in this area, and that really surprised me. So I decided that I would come over here and look closer and see if I could spot as many different insects as I could. And then I decided I would start making a field guide so I could understand a little bit more about what I was seeing and see if I could learn more about what I was seeing. So today I'm going to teach you guys how to make a field guide yourself so that you can explore more closely what is going on in your backyard. So first, let's understand what a field guide actually is. A field guide is a visual aid that helps you identify and learn more about what you've discovered. So for instance, this one's all about birds right here. And this one is all about pond life. So inside it has a whole bunch of different things that you might find near the pond. So pretty simple. So that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to make our own field guide that will help us learn more about what we have seen or what we're exploring around our habitat.
So to get started, you really should know how to make accurate observations. So we're going to learn that right now. When I make an accurate observation, I usually start my sentence off by saying, I notice. So for instance, I notice these leaves are green, right? But if I say something like, I notice this is weird, that's my opinion, really, so that's not an accurate observation. And if I say that an insect made holes in this leaf, that's one possible explanation, but it's not, I don't have enough evidence to actually say that. So I could just say that there are holes in this leaf, and I notice there are holes here. So let's practice making some observations using the term I notice. So for instance, I notice that these leaves all have little rough edges right here. And when I feel it, I notice this leaf is actually really rough. It's kind of sticky to the touch. And I notice that on the stem of these leaves are little white things right here that kind of remind me of hairs. So those are all accurate observations that are going to help me when I'm making my field guide. The next thing that helps us observe is to ask questions. So let's go back to this hole in the leaf that we looked at earlier. We noticed there was a hole in this leaf, but I wonder if an insect made that hole. I noticed these little sharp edges, they remind me of little teeth edges, so maybe that is what has happened here. I'm not sure. Another question I might wonder is if I look right up here again on this stem, I wonder why this plant has these little white things coming out. I wonder if that's a way to help keep insects from eating the stem, maybe. So that's another thing that helps us observe, is to ask questions and say what we wonder. And finally, it can help you when you're making observations to say what something reminds you of. So for instance, I've been kind of saying that already, right? You heard me when I said I noticed these little white things poking out on the side of the stem, and they reminded me of little hairs, right? These big, huge leaves right here kind of remind me of the big leaves I eat in my salad, although I wouldn't eat these. So when you say something reminds you of, it helps you make a connection and it helps you make deeper observations. And this is perfect timing because we just found this really cool insect right here on this plant. It's really well camouflaged. So we're gonna put our observation skills to the test, and we're gonna start making our field guide. So when you draw pictures, you want to be as accurate as possible. It's not about making a pretty picture. It's about making as many details as you can. So I'm gonna draw this guy a little bit bigger so I can get those details on my piece of paper. I notice that he's long and slender. So I'm gonna get a long, slender body in here. And then I notice up close, it might be hard for you guys to see, but he's got two little, looks like tails coming out of the back end. So I'm gonna put those in here like that. And I notice he's got these tiny little feet right up at the front. So I'm gonna put those tiny little feet in. And it looks like he's got stripes all over his body. So I'm gonna put in those little lines that I see on his body as well. Right there. And then I'm gonna label it as well. It's another really important thing to do when you are journaling, is to label. So I notice, for instance, he's green. So I'm gonna say green body. And the lines are actually kind of yellow. So I'm gonna do an arrow here and say yellow lines. And it looks like he is so well camouflaged with the leaf. I'm gonna write that down, camo with leaf that he is on right here. And so the more details you can get on here, the more accurate your observation is, and the easier it will be for you to remember what you've seen later on. So I'm gonna look even closer. Oh, and it does look like down this back of his body, he actually has a stripe all the way down the back. So I'm gonna add that detail as well. And then I'm gonna measure it. It's about that length. So I'm gonna make an actual size. This is how big it actually is, actual size. And so now I've got a lot more information about my organism, and I can start making some more insects in this plant area for my journal. All right, so here is a picture of my field guide that I created. And next to that are some pictures that I took of the insects that I had found on these plants. And I just wanted you to take a close look and see if you could tell which insect from the photograph matches up with the insect that I've drawn. So I've tried to include both color and labeling in order to fully and accurately describe the insect that I've discovered. So let's take a few minutes and see if you can match up which one is which. So what do you think? Do you think my drawings are fairly accurate? Am I capturing the structures, the body parts that I see, the colors that I see fairly well? And the pictures aren't pretty, right? It's all about making it accurate and getting as much information as you possibly can onto your page so that you can really tell the difference between the different organisms that you found. One of the really neat benefits of journaling and creating a field guide like this is as you start to draw these details, you realize that you have a lot of questions. So some of the questions that I began to wonder about as I was drawing this was, I wondered why, this one up here and this one down here both have really big red eyes. And I was wondering if that meant they were related to one another because they had a lot of differences as well. This one laid its wings down, whereas this one had its wings pointed out. So there were some similarities and differences that made me really curious. And the same for these three that I was drawing right here. I noticed that each one of these, when they flew, it looked like they had 4 pair of wings instead of 2 pair of wings. And the upper wings were this casing that were hard, like my fingernail, kind of hard. And so again, I was wondering if these were all related. So a lot of different questions can arise when you create your own field journal. So I hope that you're inspired to go outside, take a closer look at what you can find around your home or out in the park, and to create your very own field guide. One thing I want you to notice is that on my field guide, I never included any names. So one thing you can do is you can try to look these up on the internet perhaps, or come by the Nature Center and ask for a field guide, or we can help you try to identify what you found based on your photograph. And then some other ideas, your journal and your field guide doesn't have to look like this. There's so many different things that you could do. You could do a field guide to everything in a square foot of your yard. So this is one that one of our naturalists did. And it's a square of lawn. So she went out to her yard and she got down on her hands and knees and looked at everything in a little square and drew all of those things for her field guide, which I thought was really cool. And then another one of our naturalists made a summer journal. So it's all about things that she saw this summer. And that was her field guide. And you can see her details on here. She wrote a few things as well. And so that was her journal. You could do a journal or a field guide of everything that you see that goes through your window. Not through your window, past your window. So you can sit down and just see, clouds, birds, squirrels, whatever you see through your window over the period of 30 minutes. You could go out in your yard and do a field guide of everything red in your yard. That would be pretty cool. You could do a field guide of everything you find under one rock. That would be a really cool field guide too. So whatever you do, I hope you have a good time and are inspired to go outside and look a little closer.
Hope you had fun with those activities. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. Be sure to like us on Facebook and share, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel at Metro Park.